can top the WSR. How can you top this season?
On the road to the Grid World Series, we can expect more action, more drama, and it's all happening right here in the WSR.
Grid 2019 is everything I ever wanted, but with some things I never knew I wanted. A few little disclaimers before we start is that this game comes right off of a Grid 2 playthrough, and so, I'm really going to have an awful lot to compare it to in that regard. It was also done on PC, so the performance and everything doesn't quite match what you might find on consoles. If it does, that's great. If it doesn't, well, I'm sorry. And also, a quick side note, a fuller review can actually be found at sidemissionblog.co.uk. Shout out to those guys. Link is in the description. So let's start off every review the way I always do, with an overview. And to be honest, it's really weird that someone could be hyped for a racing game in a series known for having little to no story. Now, while Grid and Grid 2 having a base premise to go off, you can't really expect much from a game in a series that's much of the same. And then there's Grid 2019, and from the intro, you know some of the aspects you're going to get yourself in for. The first race you participate in is just almost what you should expect from the game. You're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking to get your right handling and such, but you're only going to have to do that after so many cars. Different cars handled differently, and when you tune them, some cars can be absolute monsters, and other ones can be absolutely horrendous to drive. Now the second race, that kicks off something amazing. If you haven't seen Doom Patrol, just watch a bit of episode 1, there's a bit where they're racing, it's exactly like that. Absolutely amazing. Third race, kinda similar to the second race, although you just kind of spin out and crash and then end up at the back of the pack or somewhere and just have to fight your way forward in one lap. And to be honest, it isn't the best of races, but it's alright. Side note here, there's a few familiar faces from Grid 2 that I've seen, and oh dear goodness, I am glad the Nemesis System is a thing, because now I actually have reasons to hate these people. Now, story is a fun one, because technically speaking this game has a loose story in the same way that all Grid games can have some form of loose story, because the word story is defined as an account of imaginary or real people and events told for entertainment, and by that definition we do check that off the list. The only real issue is that the story always boils down to, I am insert name, I race for insert team name, in hundreds of events that span across the globe in many different cars. Yeah, that's essentially it. Now, of course, obviously you can make your own little imaginary story in your head as to how you're doing it, but I mean, in the end, that's about as much of a premise as a story as you'll ever get when it comes to the Grid series. Even though there's a lack of story in this game, there is an overarching goal in the end. The goal is to enter the Grid World Series Championship, and for that you're going to need 4 stamped tokens, for lack of a better word. These are essentially just like little stamps you get in your passport, and when you get 4 of them, you can enter the Grid World Series. Fucking riveting. Now, of course, after doing some races, you can unlock some little badges to put on your profile, as well as a nice little banner and background for every time you level up and complete certain races and certain things. This is called the progression system, I think. Now, you might be getting the rough, distinct impression from listening to this that I actually don't like this game. Well, you're wrong, I absolutely do like this game. It's just really hard to talk about story in a game that has no story by a publisher known for making racing games such as the Formula 1 series, which is an actual series of racing events that happen in the real world, and that has its own laws and rules, and that game has a story made by Codemasters, yet this game that they made up of their own racing event doesn't have a story. What the hell? Let's go on to the really good stuff though, the mechanics, and not the ones in a pit crew. So mechanically this game deviates from Grid and Grid 2 and takes more from the bastard child Grid Autosport. Now that's not to say there's not a few things from Grid and Grid 2 in there, but an awful lot of things from Grid Autosport have also leaked their way in there. Such things as racing lines, which can also be found in games like Forza, but as well as that, things such as cutting corners can actually get you time penalties. Not so much the slowdown penalties you got in Autosport, but time penalties adding up to 2 seconds onto your actual time. Now, as well as that, in certain events you can end up going off track by accident, and that in turn could nullify the entire lap, and when you're doing a time event, that lap could be the difference between coming in first place and coming in last because you were on track to beat the guy in first place, but now the lap is nullified and you technically have to use a rewind to unnullify it. Now this also shows up in the hot lap event as well. Now a hot lap is just something you can do before an event actually starts. You usually start in 16th place, but if you do the hot lap you can get a feel for the map if you don't quite know it. As well as that, if you're faster than the guy's time at the top left, you can technically start in first place then. So if you end up going out of track, congratulations, you just go back to 16th place. So you might as well either A, rewind, or B, pause and restart. Now of course the hot lap has its own ups and downs and pros and cons, and frankly this is more of a gameplay thing than a mechanic thing, although it just kind of organically cropped up. Back to the mechanics. Now in the gameplay section of the options, there's actually 3 sliders you can adjust. Now these 3 sliders can take the game from an absolute simulation to an absolute arcade racer, just depending on how you do it. And certain cars you're going to want to tweak differently to other cars, although I can usually get away with using the exact same setup for all of my cars, unless it's a fucking Ferrari. This thing drifts too hard. Weather conditions are another factor. If you're doing a lap in, say, Barcelona in the day when it's dry, and then you go ahead and do it in the day when it's raining, it's a completely different race. Even if you've done everything exactly the same way, your car's going to skid out more because weather actually has an effect on how vehicles handle, which is a good welcome change to Grid. Now after your first 3 races, you're essentially thrust upon with a teammate, and personally I never liked them in Grid. These are liabilities you essentially hope weren't a waste of money and don't take away too much for what they don't fucking give you. At least in this game you can try to micromanage them with the help of the D-pad. Up will get them to push and down will get them to defend. However, they're so damn useless that they can't push for a higher position in a straight line, and they can't defend first place with a 5-second lead. Damn, I miss Grid 2. So we touched upon this previously, but though it was refined and made more popular in more modern racing games, Grid did conceptualise the rewind mechanic back in 2008 as far as I'm aware, and it followed suit in all of their iterations. However, different games made it a little more dumbed down, and Grid just kind of followed their suit. So long gone are the days where you actually got to pick in real time with a bit of good management on the triggers where you were going to take your, restart from essentially. That's gone, and it's just a simple case of push Y, wait for the bar to go back before the crash, push Y again, continue like it didn't happen. A bigger difference in this game in comparison to other Grid games is the inclusion of levels. Now, Grid 1 did have the licenses which were kind of like levels, but this one is just straight up levels. You get 5,000 experience, you go up a level, once you hit a certain cap it becomes 6,000 experience. I'm sitting at level 70 and I still just need to make 6,000 experience, which is technically possible in one race, so in one race you can go up a level. Levels will unlock vinyl wraps. As well as that, they're going to get you some new liabilities that you can go ahead and hire. Each liability has their own attack, defense, loyalty and skill levels, and this is just absolutely trivial numbers in my opinion. Each liability will take anywhere between 10 and 50% of your winnings, and even in their preferred specialisation class, a Chainsmoker would beat them in a drag race. So right now on screen you're seeing the PC specs, you'll be able to see that at the very end as well, just in case you're curious. And as Take-Two and Rockstar once said, that's a beefy rig. Maybe not now, but back then it surely was. And normally I run new games, especially ones that want a better CPU than what I have or in your generation, on a sort of custom mix settings of highs, mediums with low shadows, because let's be honest, here in a racing game I ain't going to be looking at the damn shadows now, am I? Well, I'm not going to lie, I just immediately took this game, took it from the ultra preset and went, you know what? High. And you know something? Here's the benchmark results, and let's be honest here, wet day at 147, dry day at 188, dry night at 169, and a wet night at 153 frames per second respective. On high? Yeah, that's pretty fucking good. This game runs buttery smooth as an insult to butter, and let's be honest here, it also kind of sets up my lactose intolerance while playing this game, but these numbers were based off of races roughly 4 minutes in length, and I'm not going to lie, I really only dropped to below 144 frames when I was going to loading screens or when I was going through menus. Even the overall load of my computer was really low, like in comparison to other games such as Escape from Tarkov and Rainbow Six Siege. They really pushed the computer. Right down below you'll actually see some graphs just show up on the screen. That's that. This barely pushed my computer, which is absolutely amazing. I can stream this game whilst actually playing it at a decent frame rate. Speaking of playing the game, gameplay. So it's kind of hard to talk about the gameplay of a racing game by its very nature, because fundamentally all racing games are the kind of the same thing. Just hold RT, turn left, turn right, try not to crash, and none of this really sets any racing games apart. Grid is no different. Compared to its older siblings, Grid 2019 is packed with many more features and slight gameplay changes that turn the game into a run-of-the-mill racer or a full simulation, but it's still a racing game in the end. So let's get mine and the community's biggest disappointment out of the way right now, shall we? What the fuck happened to drift events? Judging by what I can see on the community page in Steam, however, I think, maybe if Codemaster want to do everybody right, they might end up giving us drift events. It might be DLC and you might have to pay for it, but you know what? Get my drift events. I'll pay for that. Let's talk about the new features though. One of the new features is in fact the Nemesis System. Now the Nemesis System does something to corners. The corner might look good to just go ahead and hit the guy in front of you, but now you gotta wonder, are you gonna damage your steering? Are you gonna damage your suspension? You gonna do your engine in? You gonna screw up your gears? Or is Sven in front of you now just gonna hate you and make it almost impossible to pass him at every given turn? Hit him and find out. And as well as that, I didn't actually realise until it happened, but your teammates can actually become Nemesis as well, and once a teammate's a Nemesis, well, good luck getting them to do damn near anything. You want them to so much as push something, and all you get in return is, he said he's not taking orders from you, nah. Not gonna lie, it kinda sounds like Korg from Thor Ragnarok. Here's the absolutely beautiful thing about the Nemesis system. The AI racers usually follow the race lane, which if you played any other racing game, you kinda know is classed as the optimal path to take. And in that regard, if you try to overtake someone whilst they're on the race line, well, they will happily deviate from that race line to fucking pit maneuver you, spin you out, and give you terminal damage. At that point, you basically got to rewind or restart the race. And you know something, sometimes I just want to restart after that. Speaking of trying to overtake, there's a new levelling system, and that brings us scoring. Now, you can score points in 3 categories: bravery, speed, and technique. For bravery, all you got to do is drift. For speed, getting fast laps and good split breaks, and for technique, things such as overtaking will get you points there. This can be chained up to 5 times, and each of these times makes it a lot easier to get points. Now, the only thing is, each of these sort of max out at 5,000 points, so you can get 5,000 points in bravery, 5,000 points in speed, and then in technique. Once you cap out, that's it. It's a lot harder to get points in there. As well as that, if you break a combo at any point, be it accidentally or deliberately, you cannot rewind to go back to it. That combo is broken. Once you've reached the 5,000 points cap in any one of these, it's only good really for keeping a combo alive or starting a combo, because it's damn near impossible to actually get points in it. Take it from me, I do a lot of drifting, I max out bravery so much. What this means that for each map there's a chance of gaining 15,000 points per race in that map, which could take you up anywhere between 3 levels. Now, like Codemaster said, there's a few things from Grid 1, some good tracks in there, and a few tracks from Grid 2 as well as some new ones. But one thing they did remove, like I said earlier, was the good old drifting events. I do also kind of miss the 24-minute demands races. It's also a lot harder to drift prototype cars, yet a lot easier to drift Formula 3 cars. GT2 is definitely the sweet spot in my opinion though, like you can drift those bad boys all day. Now, in previous reviews, as well as on Steam and on Side Mission Blog, I did actually give this a number rating. However, in this time, I am just going to say I recommend getting this game if you're a fan of the series. If you're not, but still quite fancy it, maybe try pick it up on the cheap. It is good, but it does miss some of the things that made Grid 1 and 2 superior games to it. And now on to my final thoughts. This game suffers from improvements that were needed but lack features that we liked from previous games, like drift events. And this game's certainly not Game of the Year material, but I feel Codemasters did do an excellent job and delivered something new and exciting, but also old and familiar at the same time. New and old tracks as well as new vehicles do make this a warm welcome for returning players, as well as that a good pickup point for new players, considering it's much harder to find Grid 1 now, which is vastly superior in every way, shape and form than most of the Grid games. It was removed from Steam and GOG quite a while ago, so there really is only one way to pick up Grid 1.
Do what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate. Yar, har, fiddle indeed. Being a pirate is a right indeed. Do what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate.
I feel obliged to say I don't condone that. As well as that, at the time of writing and recording this, there's now a notice on the Grid 2 Steam page that reads, "At the request of the publisher, Grid 2 is no longer available for sale on Steam." This basically translates to buy our new game. Grid 2 is better though. It had drift. Anyway guys, thanks very much for listening, thanks very much for watching, and once again a huge shout out to Side Mission Blog who let me post my review there first before I posted it on Steam. I still did have to keep it within the Steam word count however, so I didn't have to butcher it, and in the end I had to butcher it, so here's where I was able to say everything that I couldn't say there and had a little less restriction on the language. So why don't you go over there, maybe follow them on Twitter, go check out their site, they got a ton of good reviews over there, linked in there. And hopefully I'll see you next time, either here or elsewhere, for the Call of Duty Modern Warfare review. That's going to be absolutely tanked full for just story. I ain't even going to touch the multiplayer because that story looks too damn good. That will be reviewed here, as well as that anywhere else that will take it. And I, of course, will link them, whoever they are, in the description, as well as on Twitter. So hopefully I will see you guys really soon, probably about maybe beginning of November for the next time. But until then, do whatever the fuck you want, because it's a free world and I'll catch you in a bitch. Now, at the time of writing and recording this as well, there is a note on the Steam page for Grid 2 that says, "At the request of the publisher, Grid 2 is no longer available for sale on Steam." Or in other words, buy our new fucking game. This was going so well, why the fuck did you text me?